CITR 101.9 FM in Vancouver. This is Synchronicity, talk radio for your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Marie. Happy Friday, and welcome to the show, Kate and Jean-Pierre, the co-founders of Saje Natural Wellness. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Marie. Wonderful to be here.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to play an intro. Actually, I went to the Wayne Dyer event the other night on Monday, and I met with him, and he said, "This is Wayne Dyer, and you're listening to Synchronicity," but it's not working on the computer.
Oh.
So, but hopefully I'll have that for you next week. So today we're talking with Kate and Jean-Pierre, co-founders of Saje Natural Wellness, and they are also, they provided a bunch of gifts for the funding drive, which we raised a grand total of $21,893.35.
Woo! Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Our goal was actually $15,000, so we
you blew
that
right by your goal.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you to everyone who donated, and remember, if you do have gifts and prizes waiting here, please come by during business hours, I think 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and you can pay your pledge and pick up your wonderful prizes. And if you'd like to call in today and ask a question to Kate and Jean-Pierre, the number to call is 604-822-2487. That spells 604-UBC-CITR. And you can always email spiritualshow@gmail.com. So you might be listening on 101.9 FM in Vancouver or CITR.ca. And the show is also syndicated on CosmicDimensions.com in the States. So those are the places that you can be listening to the show. And we're going to get started right away. Also, I have some prizes from Saje left over from the funding drive. So I'm going to be giving away a prize pack that I've put together. So thank you to Saje for providing those gifts. So keep listening for the cue to call so that you know when to call in to get that prize. So welcome again to the show. Thank you so much for being here. So Saje has been around for quite a few years now. It started out as one little shop at the North Vancouver Quay, right?
Lonsdale
Quay, yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started, Jean-Pierre?
Well, it probably started with my health, or lack of which. So once upon a time, I had a small car accident that landed me with quite some whiplash, and some well-meaning doctors gave me first some painkillers, and when they weren't working, I had some anti-inflammatories and muscle relaxants, and eventually it didn't matter what kind of cocktail I was using. The pain just kept migrating, and eventually there was talk of chronic pain, and the word fibromyalgia was just coming around. And by then, my stomach wasn't doing very well with the drugs, so I wasn't taking in my nutrition very well. And over 7 years, it got to a point where I was in front of or underneath a huge scanner where radioactive isotopes was being pumped through my bloodstream. And the doctors basically said, "We really can't figure out what's wrong with you or how we're going to fix it. And by the way, you're depressed, so we're now recommending Prozac." And
on top of everything else.
Mm-hmm. And that's the day that I said, there's something about this medical system that's not working for me. I need to go look elsewhere. And I had a science background, and so I went to a symposium on traditional medicine. And was reminded of how logical herbal medicine was. The Chinese have been using it for millennia, and the neat thing about their society is that the old people grow old and wise, and in fact so wise that they can help raise the kids. And in our society, all four of my grandparents ended up with everything from being hospitalized to dementia and Alzheimer's, and it was clear to me that our society didn't really know how to grow old people well. And so I put the two together and thought, herbal medicine, there's no chemicals messing with your brain. And when aromatherapy, or the use of essential oils, showed up at the end of the symposium, the penny dropped for me when I was told that an essential oil is so concentrated that it is 70 to 80 times more potent than a dried herb.
Wow.
And that's when I went, okay, that's what it's going to take to get me straightened out. And that was the launch of aromatherapy in my life. And then, of course, once I had blended these oils and had straightened out my pain and my depression and my headaches, Kate, who is an avid retailer, said, all right, well, we got to make these little brown bottles a little more attractive than that. And you know, why don't we have a store so we can let the world have access to that? And that's how the first store was born.
Wow. Well, so Kate, at what point did you see the value in this from a retail standpoint?
Well, I was fortunate enough to grow up in my mother's retail store in small-town Ontario, so I really knew the community feeling that was built from a bustling retail enterprise. And I was also very interested in our sense of smell, because when I was out in retail, I could see that all of our other senses were being so bombarded, but our sense of smell was sort of not very catered to. So when Jean-Pierre and I, on his quest for better health, discovered aromatherapy, it was this great marriage of his quest for wellness and my quest for the olfactory system being stimulated and to create a really community-feeling retail environment. So that's what we've dedicated our professional lives to doing, is creating that environment of wellness and holism, and it's definitely served both of our well-being in the process.
Beautiful. And I must say that the Sage stores are beautifully laid out as well. The lighting is really pretty, and everything looks really pretty as well as smelling nice. So
and that's Kate's doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you can also get massage there too, the Saje.
Yeah, that's a very popular feature in our location, so you can really experience the healing treatments right while you're there on the premise.
Beautiful. So I'm wondering, this is a show about spirituality. So I'm wondering, Kate and Jean-Pierre, if you could describe a bit about Sage's philosophy and how it relates to spirituality.
Well, I could probably best express it by Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. When things got tough, and you know, when you're building a chain of retail stores on financing that started with 2 credit cards, things can get tough. And so along the way, I discovered those laws, and they really sort of reformatted where we were coming from, because the business started with a deep, deep need for me to get well. And by the time I was getting physically well, I could feel there was another pull, and that was a connection to spirit. And those laws gave me a very practical, read a law of day grounding that was so effective for my own life and then for my marriage with Kate, that we quickly took them to our staff and said, here, will you read these with us, and will you make that part of how you run your store? So there was a time when you couldn't walk in a Sage store without the staff member having a big smile on their face. You know, today's Wednesday, it's the law of least effort. Or today being Friday, it would be the law of detachment. And so, you know, we know to give up our attachment to how things are, and how that will lead to things being even better than what we can imagine. And yet Thursday's law would have reminded us to have an intention, but just don't be attached to it, and don't be attached to when or how it shows up. And so that permeated our business, both at our head office and in the stores, and it really took us through that tough patch.
Beautiful.
I remember in the very early days entering one of the stores, and a woman who was working with us took me by both hands and said to me, you don't know the things that have happened to me since I've been exposed to these oils. And I always remembered that moment, because my entry to being surrounded by essential oils was very gradual. So I didn't notice it the same way. And when she said this to me, I started to talk to more people and do research about this. And of course, it's quite natural never mind the pun, that when you're exposed to essential oils, it's like being exposed to nature. And in our modern worlds, we aren't, although out here at UBC, we have lots of exposure, lots of exposure to nature. But in most urban centers, we are more and more cut off. And there's such a connection, of course, with experiencing your spiritual being, whatever your beliefs are, by being in nature. So when you can't be connected with nature, or you don't choose to be, people are getting connected back to their who they really are through the use of essential oils, which come directly from nature. So that's one of the reasons also why it's so important to us, and has remained part of our mission, to keep our products 100% natural, so that they're not diluted and they're not polluted with any other fixatives or artificial ingredients that are going to get in the way of that energetic healing that people can experience from the essential oils.